Phil, I appreciate your setting aside some time to talk about me. Just kidding. You know, I was just thinking, you know, and I am, as much as I encourage my clients to, you know, ask for referrals, get feedback from the clients, sometimes I'm hesitant to do that myself, especially on our regular coaching calls. So I appreciate you setting aside some extra time just to talk a little bit about the work that we are doing together and how that's impacting your business.
Okay, great.
So, you know, thinking about when we first started working together, you know, what was it that you were really trying to accomplish? Because I know you had some other people helping you with different aspects of your business, and I took a little bit of a different approach to helping you understand that.
I guess there were a couple things that made me decide to start working with you. One was before we started working together, you gave me your time. You gave me a couple hours of your time, and I know how time is valuable. And I felt like when we had those calls, something that's important to me, I felt like we had good interaction, because in order for any coaching relationship to work, you have to get along with the person, you have to be able to talk to them, and that was really important. And even those calls helped me start to identify some of the things as a new business that I wasn't necessarily doing. You helped me with my messaging and things like that.
That's great. Yeah. Because, you know, I think there's sometimes, because I offer those strategy sessions up or those 15-minute fast track calls up all the time as part of my outreach, that I think advisors are reluctant to take the time to do that because they think I'm going to try to sell them. And really, I don't. I really try to answer questions and even give some steps for direction. Is that what you saw in those calls?
Absolutely. And our calls were much longer than that, too. I think we had 2 calls that were like an hour each. And it really felt like, to me, I got value just out of those calls, even though we weren't working together at all. But I felt like you were taking the time to try to understand and make me more aware of things. Like, it made me think a lot about what I was doing. And then as we started to work together and I started to see that some of the issues that I was having, we addressed those right away into things where I didn't know the answers, or I didn't have a consistent answer to questions that people might ask. Between those calls and our first, when we first started, it really helped me to be able to answer those questions. Now I can consistently give the same answer because I thought about it in ways I hadn't. It just, sometimes you really have to think about stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the reason that we did a couple of calls up front was I don't like to get to the end of a strategy session and not feel like I've offered strategy. And if all we're doing is kind of sharing ideas and there's not a specific action plan that comes out of it, it's not as valuable to the person that I'm speaking with, because I really want to give value. And so, just to be clear, because our process was a little different, a lot of times I'll just take a 15-minute call with somebody so that we can get on the same page. And then we'll schedule an hour session where we really dig into the strategy, all with the idea of, if I can provide value during the strategy session, then there's a real basis for talking about whether or not it would be a good fit for working together long term. So maybe that was a little bit different in the way that we got started, because I don't remember exactly why, but I do remember taking extra time. I wanted to I guess I was just trying to make sure that I made the point. Plus, our coaching calls always go a little bit on the long side anyway, because we enjoy working with each other so much.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. So, when you think about what we've worked on together, what's the biggest thing that we've accomplished so far? And we've only been working together, 6 or 7 months. So
I think the biggest thing for me is it's improved my messaging a lot. So one of the first exercises that we did was we kind of looked at, I remember the 2 things that we did. One is kind of, what's your vision? What do you think your business is going to look like in the future? And I had thought about that a lot, so that was a little bit easier for me. But the other part was, that the signature, what you like to call the signature solution. which I call my pathway to an informed retirement, which really helped me address questions. So now when I sit down and I talk to a prospect, I can walk them through that and tell them, well, this is what it's like if we work together, and this is how we address the different things. And, it's got the different levels. And a lot of times people ask, so how often am I going to hear from you? Well, I know that, and it's built into my signature solution. And all those different elements, having it there in that way, I think it really helps, and people really understand, a little bit more about me and my process, what it's going to be like to work with me, and then also know that they're going to hear from me, and I'm not just going to do something for them and disappear.
Right. And even though you have a newer RIA, you've been at this a long time. You've been in the financial advice business for a long time. So I felt like as we were working together, it was important to capture that experience that you can bring to somebody from being in the business for a long time to a new business, so that your business leveraged your total expertise, not just the expertise of somebody who was just getting started.
Absolutely right. And I think the biggest thing for me in my messaging was you helped me a lot. And this even went back to before I signed up, to understand more about the idea that, from our calls that I believe financial plans are really important. And that's kind of a basis, but I made them so important that I separated them from everything else. And I was having a difficult time trying to get people to go beyond that financial plan. And with the work that we've done, while there's still times that I'll start with just the financial plan, I can articulate much better the value of the ongoing relationship and the importance of not just doing the plan, but doing things beyond that. And that was a big part of, those conversations that we had and on an ongoing basis, because I know there's still times that I have questions about that, and it's really good to have somebody to talk to about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think a lot of people, maybe maybe even you said this to me, it's nice just to have somebody looking over your shoulder, because when you're kind of running your own shop, and you have ideas or people throw stuff at you, it's nice to have somebody looking over your shoulder to kind of figure out, does that really fit? Will that really help? And it almost puts somebody else on your team, like a virtual partner in your business.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's really important to somebody like me, because I'm a solo, right? So I have other people that are in the business I can talk to some, but not the same way that I can talk to you. And you bring experience and knowledge to the table. And sometimes that helps. And just the idea that I have somebody that I can really talk to about it. A lot of times I would talk to my wife about stuff, and sometimes she was helpful and sometimes she wasn't, but that was the easiest person to talk to. And I think it probably makes her happier now that I don't have to ask all those questions of her, because I have you too.
Although I've heard some of the advice that she gives, and she's really good at keeping you on track too. I don't want to take too much credit.
She absolutely is.
So, so as a coach, you think of, I know you've worked with some other groups before. You've had mentors through your career, both in what you're doing now and what you've done in the past. What kind of sets, me and my process apart? What would you tell somebody, who's trying to say, how do I differentiate what Rob does from what other folks do?
I think one of the biggest things to me, and one of the reasons that I felt comfortable starting to work with you, because this is one of the things I sensed during our initial calls, was the idea that you don't say, here's how we do it, and I want you to do it this way. I feel it's a very individualized, personal process. So I know what I bring to the table in terms of my background and experience. I know that's important, but when we're trying to do things, we don't have to do it the way somebody else does it. We do it in the way that's best for me, based upon me. So it's a very personalized process. And I think that's really important to anybody to know, that it's not like you're going to have to go start working with Rob and say, you have to follow Rob's methods and Rob's track. Rob will guide you down your track and help you stay on that path. But it's important to know that you can still keep, whatever vision you have, you can still maintain. You don't have to fit to Rob's business. Rob, I feel like you fit to my business.
Yeah. There are a lot of programs out there that I call them cookie cutter, and it's not because they're bad programs. It's because anybody who kind of joins into them has to kind of match their business up to that process. And I like to meet you exactly where you are. And even if I feel like there's something, kind of at the foundational level of a business that needs to be addressed, if that's not the highest priority for you for getting to your next level, we can kind of skip over that, get what you need to get done first and done right, and then go back if we have to. And I think that just comes from, having done this for 30 plus years.
Oh yeah, I definitely think that that's true. Absolutely.
So what advice would you give someone who was thinking about hiring a coach, knowing that it's a significant investment of money and time? What are 2 or 3 questions they should answer for themselves, or ask me if we're having a strategy session?
Well, I think first is make sure that you feel like it's a good fit, because if it's not a good fit, I don't think it's going to be a good relationship. And like you said, we've run over on our calls. There's times that we spend 10 or 15 minutes at the front of the call talking about personal things because we get along. And while that's not directly related to your business, I still think it matters.
Well, people can't see that you have baseballs in your background and I have baseballs in my background, so that might be a clue.
That's right.
Even though you are a Yankees fan. And
I sure am. And I know you're an Indians fan. So I think that's really important. Also, I think that the other point, then make sure that either they're going to let you take things in your direction and guide you along the way, or if they're not, which can happen, are you comfortable with the direction that they are going to put you in? Because you don't want to end up doing something that you're not comfortable with. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I look at my business, and I joke about this sometimes, but there's a lot of truth in it too. When people say, so why did you decide to do this? And I said, I got tired of working for idiots. I wanted to be the idiot and run my own business. I say that I'm half joking, but I'm also serious about it, because the RIA that I worked for before I started my firm, there were conflicts that I faced in terms of how he ran his business and how I thought a business should be run, from the ethical side, from the business side. And I'm much more comfortable, having the business the way I want to do it, because now I know that whatever I think is the right way, that's how it's done. Doesn't mean that it's the best way all the time, but that's what I think is best. And the ability to be able to work within that construct while we work together is really important to me too. So make sure that you're comfortable on that front as well.
Yeah. So in that, there's kind of a matching up of values and purpose. You talked about, when we first started working together, one of the things that you felt that you had a good picture on was kind of that what I call the picture of success, what you wanted your business to look like. But when you're hiring a coach, you want to make sure, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong or add to this, that picture has some purpose behind it. It's not just about growing business for business sake. It's about building a business that really serves your clients, because you want to serve your clients the same way that I want to serve my clients.
I think that's absolutely right. And so one of the things, like, I had my vision, but one of the things that came through that is, like, there's building blocks that get you there. And so when you go back to, right, well, here's what you're working towards. Well, let's try to think about what we need to do to get there. And I know that, like you said, we've been working together 6 or 7 months, and I think about it, and I know I'm on the right track. I know that some of the things that I'm doing are not necessarily, like, from a size perspective, exactly where I want to be, but I know that I'm building towards the right thing. And so it does help you think. You have to always think about your business, not just in terms of, where you want to get to, but it's how you're going to get there. So there's so that's a lot of I think a lot of the conversation we had were all about making sure that you understand what it takes to get there. And, there's different ways to get there. I think I remember you talking about, if you want to get to $100 million of assets, to pick a number, you can do that by having an average account size of $1 million, an average account size of $500,000, an average account size of $2 million. I mean, all those things matter. You have to think about those too. So I remember having a lot of conversations about that as well.
Right. Because I think that's one of the things that we probably did first and foremost was really make sure we identified what that ideal client is for you. Because like a lot of advisors, a lot of people starting new businesses, you're like, well, I can't afford to not do that business because I have time, but that's not necessarily the right way to approach it.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right.
So in closing here, I think we're towards the end of the call. This has been great feedback, great discussion. What else, what would you say, if you think about, working with me in the process that we go through, are there any, additional kind of words that you want to, pat me on the back for, or things that you'd like to say, if you're considering working with Rob, make sure you ask this question.
I think that the big thing is I'll tell you that, we speak every week, and sometimes I go into those calls and I'm like, I know exactly what I want to talk about. Like yesterday, I had a topic, and we had talked about a topic, but I had something else. We ended up spending the whole call on the topic that I had brought up, even though I wanted to talk about the topic we were originally going to discuss as well.
It's the system, because I think the topic that we were going to talk about, because we are, about a half a year into this, where we're going to kind of go back and look and see how we've done against the plan that we set up front when we did that free strategy session. We did our first, full-on coaching engagements together. But there was something that came up in your business that just, made you question whether you were on the right track. So we didn't, so we went kind of back to my roadmap, the Encore method, and said, how do we address that question?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny, but I just had a call before we got on this call, and it ended with, I don't think that it was a really nice woman, but what she's looking for, I don't think that's really what I can do. And I instituted some of the questions and some of the things that we talked about yesterday, and it made it clear to me that this, unless something changes on her end, this is not somebody that was really a viable person for me to work with. I spent an hour on the phone with her, but it's better that I spend an hour on the phone with her, having that call. There's a couple people that I can refer her to that might be able to help her, but better I do that than have another call and then end up with and saying, well, that's too much money, I can't work with you. Is that
right. Or just a client that you wouldn't enjoy. And that's, what you just described is very much like a strategy session. You kind of approach your initial call with your clients as a strategy session where you want to give them concrete advice, get them pointed in the right direction. If you can help them, great. You take them into your financial planning process. But if not, you point them in the right direction. So they still feel good about the conversation. And that's what I try to do in my calls.
Absolutely right. That's exactly it. I mean, after even when I said to her at the end, I'm like, I'm not here to just sell you something if I can't, but I'm a fiduciary. I want to do what's best for you. And if I know some people that can help you, I'm more than happy to put you in touch with them. Right.
That's awesome. Well, Phil, I appreciate the time. One last chance to take a shot at me. Don't say anything about the Indians. Because we're struggling right now. But any last thing you might want to add to the conversation?
I can't talk about the Indians.
No, that was the game we played last.
I guess the bottom line is I've been, I'm glad that I made the decision to work with you because I think it's helping me to put my business on a good path. I went through an exercise where I drilled down and looked at, what have I done? Where's my business at today versus where it stood at the beginning of the year? And I feel a lot better about where I stand today, as well as where I'm going to be going in the future. And so I think that when I look at it that way, even if I had some things that I could say, on the negative side, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, I'm accomplishing what I want. I'm on the path that I want to be on. I feel more comfortable that I'm more firmly on that path. That path is better defined than it was when we started. And knowing that makes me think that it was a wise decision.
Yeah, that's really how I want people to feel, that we're on the right path. We're working together to make your business better, more fun. The revenues and the assets are growing, and you're really aligning yourself with that picture of success that you have for the long term.